So today we're going to be doing a video analysis of my paddle stroke and technique. We're looking at a few things I'm doing well and maybe a few things I'm maybe not doing so well in. Now I'm by no means a perfect paddler and I still have plenty of room to improve myself. So I hope through today's video we can both learn together and both improve together in our paddleboarding technique and game. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So we're going to start things off just by watching the full video all the way through at normal full speed. So we're going to see a front forward facing view as well as a left side view and a right side view. So let's get this started here. So this first one obviously is me paddling straight towards the camera. Now we're going to switch to my left side. And then to my right side. Nice. Now the board I'm paddling on in this video is actually a new race board that I recently got. This is only like my 4th or 5th time taking it paddling on the water. So we're probably going to see a little bit more wobbliness from me on the water, so getting used to riding this new paddleboard. As well in this video, it doesn't look like it, but there is still a fair amount of movement going on in the water in this open ocean conditions today. So looks calm on the water, but just know that in the water itself there's still some kind of waviness going up and down in the water as I'm paddling along. So take those factors into consideration today and give myself just maybe a little bit of grace in my paddle stroke and technique today. So let's start off first looking at my position on the paddleboard. We'll start here looking on the side view. Actually, it'd probably be a better view to see this here. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to move this video forward to more in the middle frame here, towards the beginning of this paddle stroke. So basically I want to make sure that I'm standing in the correct location on the paddleboard. I'm not standing too far forward where the nose is diving into the water, and not standing too far back where the back of the board is dipping too far into the water and the nose is dipping or pulling too high out of the water. So looking at this video frame right here, we can kind of see that my board is pretty flat in the water here. My nose is barely sticking out of the water, and the water is level all the way down the paddleboard to the tail of the paddleboard as well. So I'm in a good position here on the paddleboard for the maximizing the most usage or the maximizing the full potential of this paddleboard as I'm paddling along. Now the next thing I'm looking at here is on the frontward facing frame, basically making sure that my weight is evenly distributed across both my feet as I'm paddling along. So I'll start the video here again at full pace. Nice, I'm backing up here once again. Pause it here. So kind of keeping through the frames here at a slower rate. You can kind of see that my paddleboard is staying pretty flat in the water as I'm paddling along. I'm not leaning too far or I'm not putting too much weight on my right foot or my left foot. Now right here you can see I'm putting a little bit more weight on my left foot, so my board is tilting a little bit to this left hand side because I'm doing that as I'm switching my paddle blade here. But overall, it looks like I'm not putting too much weight on it. My board is still staying, man, move this thing down here. There we go. My board is still staying pretty flat on the water surface here on both sides of the paddleboard as I'm paddling along. So overall, pretty decent for being on a 23-inch wide paddleboard, which is super narrow for most paddleboards. Alright, now let's take a look at my posture on this paddleboard and see how I'm doing in that area in terms of my paddle technique and stroke. So when it comes to posture, I'm looking at a few things here. One, I'm checking to make sure my feet are shoulder width apart on the paddleboard when I'm standing on it, as well as making sure that my feet are pointing forward also. Also make sure that my knees are slightly bent in a ski boot stance. Also making sure that my eyes are up and forward looking as I'm paddling along. That I'm also making sure that my shoulders are relaxed, my back's relaxed, all moving and working together as I maintain good posture. So let's see how I'm doing here. This frontward facing view, once again, you can kind of see that my feet are shoulder width apart here on the paddleboard, which is pretty easy for me to do here on this narrow board because it's only so wide I can have it on this narrow paddleboard. But if you are on a wider paddleboard, just be cautious that your feet are staying shoulder width apart on your paddleboard. But for myself, as I said, doing pretty well right here. And then we'll move this side shot here. Now with being in a dugout board, we can't really see my feet. It's the only downside of this dugout board. But just know that my feet are pointing forward in this paddleboard, as well as being in the dugout version, my feet kind of only have one option as to maintain being straight in this paddleboard. So I can't really stick them out like this on the paddleboard because the rails are so close to my feet that kind of force my feet to stay straight, if that makes sense. Now when it comes to my knees here, you can see that they are slightly bent here in the ski boot stance. So basically when I'm talking about the ski boot stance, I'm basically referring to imagine yourself standing in ski boots. So if you've ever been skiing before, or maybe if you haven't, when you stand in ski boots, you kind of know that you're kind of leaning forward as you stand in the ski boots because they're kind of stiffen to this position of you kind of leaning forward as you stand in them. This simply helps you be in a better position as you're skiing down the hill. So this also applies to paddle boarding. When we're standing on our board, we want to make sure that we're maintaining this ski boot stance as we're paddling along. So looking at my frozen frame right here, you can see that my knees are bent and I am standing in the ski boot stance position. We also can look right here and see that my eyes are looking up and forward ahead of me, which is good that I'm doing that. Now looking at my shoulders and back here as I'm paddling along, we want to make sure they're staying relaxed. We want to make sure that my back is staying straight, that I'm not putting too much arch in my back, that I'm not hunching over as I'm reaching forward, that my back spine is staying long and straight, which it looks like it is, and my shoulders are staying relaxed as well. We'll talk more about my arms here in a little bit, but right now we're just kind of looking at my shoulders and my back. Let's move forward to this other side frame here. Look at this side, see what I'm doing. Shoulders are staying relaxed, they're not tensed up at all. And my back looks like it's staying straight there as well. Yeah, overall, not too much complaint in that area. Good job, Ethan. Alright, let's move on to the next phase here, which is my reach. So when I'm looking at the reach here, basically I'm going to be checking to make sure that I have my bottom arm is straight, but it's not locked, as well as my top arm is slightly bent, kind of reaching over my head, allowing my paddle to be more vertical in the water as I'm paddling along, which helps me paddle straighter as well. So basically I want to make sure I'm maximizing my reach, but I'm not overdoing it and I'm not underdoing it. So keying through this first few frames here, we'll back up a little bit here to my feet actually. Alright, so now I'm bringing my paddle blade forward. You can see that my bottom arm now is starting to straighten back out again, reaching forward to set up for my catch phase. My top arm is also, you can't see this angle, we'll see the other angle here in a bit as I look at the forward view. But it is up and reaching over my head, allowing my paddle blade to be more vertical in the water. But we'll look at that here in a second. So my blade is going into the water now for the beginning of my catch phase. Oof, a little bit of splash there. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But right here, as I kind of maxed out my full reach, you can see my bottom arm is straight. It's kind of hard to tell as I'm wearing like this sun protective shirt, but I do have just a ever so slightly tiny bit bend in my elbow here as I'm reaching forward. Make sure my arm is not completely locked. Let's go to the front angle here real quick once again. So blade's coming forward here, going to bury it in. You kind of see here that my paddle shaft here is pretty straight to vertical. I wouldn't say it's like 100%. I could definitely go with a little bit more angle to what would be my right side at this angle to make it more vertical in the water. You can see that I have a slight angle here towards my body. But my right arm is still kind of reaching up and over, allowing that blade or that shaft to be more vertical in the water. Let's do another frame here. Coming forward again. Up. Bearing the blade. Yeah, overall not terrible, but I do have a slight angle here towards my body as I'm paddling along. So I could have a little bit more reach with this top arm, a little bit further over here, allowing it to have a more vertical position in the water. But overall, not too bad. Pretty happy with that. Alright, now let's move on to taking a look at the hinging of my hips. Now this phase, or this concept of hinging, is very important when it comes to paddle boarding, as basically your hips kind of act as like the main position that all the movement happens from on your body as you're paddling. As you're hinging forward as you go through your paddle stroke, but also pulling your body back up again with your hips to move forward through another paddle stroke once again. So basically all the movement that's happening with your upper body all comes from the hinging of your hips. So if you're not hinging or you're over hinging, those both can cause problems for your paddle stroke as well. So let's take a look here at the video once again. Alright. Exiting with my paddle stroke here. Coming forward, you can see that I have come up, my upper torso has kind of come up straight here once again. Then as I bring my paddle shaft forward again, my blade, in order to start the whole phase over again, you'll start to see that my upper body starts to hinge here at my hips as I bring my upper torso down towards my paddle shaft, powering through the stroke. Then as I exit, you should see my upper body hinge up again from my hips. Yep. And then back down again. So you can see this whole process that my legs are not bouncing up and down right here. That all the movement from my paddle stroke as I come up and down for the paddle stroke all comes from the hinging of my hips. So I'll go through here once again. You can see hinging forward, grabbing that water, powering through, exiting, hinging up, hinging forward, all from my hips right here. We'll do another run here on the other side. Reaching forward, hinging down, coming up, hinging forward. Yeah, not too bad. Good hinging so far. Another win for me. Oh yeah. Alright, let's now look at our paddle control. How am I doing in controlling my paddle blade in the water as I'm paddling through the whole phase of the paddle stroke? So the first thing we'll look at here is, seems like a basic thing to be doing correctly, but a lot of beginners do this incorrectly, is making sure that your paddle blade is facing in the right direction as you're paddling along. So I know I'm doing this one correctly, obviously, because I've been paddling for a while here, but we'll see in this video frame right here, we'll see that my face of my paddle blade, so the front facing part of the curve of the blade, is facing forward. So make sure that my paddle blade is facing in the right direction. What you don't want to be doing is you're having your paddle blade backwards, where the face or the curve of it is pointing towards this direction, which basically allows you to have a worse paddle stroke as you're paddling through, as a majority of your paddle stroke will be more at a negative angle like this, pulling yourself through the water, basically pulling yourself down versus pulling you less through the water forward. So once again, just checking to make sure my paddle blade is in the right direction, which it is, so that's good. Then looking at my hands, we can see that my top hand is on top of the paddle shaft, which is good. And then the bottom hand is towards the middle section here of the shaft, or kind of just above it, which is also a good location for these longer distance paddles. If you are doing sprint racing, this does kind of change it a little bit, but in terms for the average paddler or for long distance paddles, this is kind of where you want your hand to be for the lower hand on your shaft as you're paddling along. Let's take a look at my paddle, make sure my paddle blade is fully secured in the water though as I'm paddling along. I'm going to go back to the front facing view here. We'll play at full speed. Looks pretty good. We'll play it slow motion here. Basically I'm checking to make sure that my paddle blade here, after I bury it, is not wobbling back and forth as I'm pulling myself to the paddle blade. I'll move my mouse here. So as I bury it, locked in that shaft, as I go through, yep, looks like the blade is nice and secure. So I'm fully burying that paddle blade in the water here, securing it, powering through and pulling myself to that paddle blade. That looks good. So it's good that there's no movement or side movement to that paddle blade as I'm pulling myself through the water. Basically lets me know that my paddle blade is fully secured in that water. So as I'm pulling myself to the paddle blade, it's not moving back and forth as I pull myself to it. So that looks good. So next thing I'm looking at here is the catch phase of my paddle stroke. Now the catch phase of your paddle stroke is actually one of the biggest or the most important phase of the entire process of your paddle stroke. Because if you don't have a good catch phase, basically that means the rest of your paddle stroke is going to suffer because of it. So in this video, I wanted to make sure that I'm fully burying my paddle blade in the water before I start the rest of my paddle stroke. So let's first start off here looking at my left side. We'll play this video all the way through, watching the catch phase of my paddle stroke. Alright, now the other side. Alright, so let's take a look at it again here. So I'm bringing my blade forward, I'm burying it, and then I'm starting the catch phase in my stroke, basically grabbing that water with my paddle blade. What What I don't want to be seeing is a lot of splashing, because if there's splashing, that means I'm starting to pull myself to that paddle blade before it's fully buried in the water. So that first one looked pretty good. There wasn't too much splashing. Bringing my blade forward again. Bearing it. Okay, right there we see there was a little bit of splash right here as I started pulling myself to the paddle blade. Now this does have to do a little bit with the movement of the water. As you can kind of see, watch my paddle board as well. Kind of goes up and down to the movement of the water. It is kind of hard to be 100% perfect with the catch phase sometimes when there is movement in the water, as your board's going up and down with the movement of the water. But it's still something being improved upon. I can see that I did get some splash there, so I definitely could have improved that one stroke of my paddle here. Let's keep pedaling through here though. Yeah, not too bad. Tiny bit of splash in that one, but not too bad overall. Let's go to the other side of my paddle board here. All right. So playing it through here, bearing the blade. Yeah, no splash. That was a good one. Pulling it forward again here. Looks like there wasn't a splash. Yeah, pretty good and silent. Which is pretty good, as you can see my nose of my board is splashing up and down through the water as I'm going through it. And one more here. There was a little bit of splash in that one, but not too bad overall. I'll take that. It was pretty good overall. It wasn't too much splashing, so pretty good catch phase. Alright, now let's look at the driving phase of my paddle stroke. So after I've done my catch phase, basically what I look to make sure I have a good drive through my paddle stroke. That my top arm here have a good amount of force pushing down on the paddle blade, as well as my bottom arm is handling the whole load as I pull myself to it. So kind of play through it slowly here. So once again, my bottom arm is straight but not fixed, and my top arm is up and reaching over for a good vertical paddle shaft. Bearing the blade. Oh, that was one with a little splash. It's not the good one to look at, but buried it here. Now I'm doing the whole power and drive phase of my paddle stroke. You kind of see my whole upper body working together seamlessly. You don't see my bottom arm trying to flex with my bicep, pulling it to me. And you don't see my top arm pushing too far down with the paddle blade either. You see it all working seamlessly together as I pull myself to the paddle blade. Exit once again. Now you can see my bottom arm bend a little bit in order to bring my paddle blade forward again. And I straighten it back out again. Yeah, it looks like I'm doing pretty good with my whole body working together during that drive phase. See this other side. Driving through, exiting, recovering, stretching out again. Yep, you can see this whole section of my upper body working together seamlessly. You don't really see one section overpowering the other section. Boom, all moves together. Yep, good drive phase, looks good. So another technique I want to make sure that I'm doing correctly is feathering my paddle blade. So as I bring my blade forward, I want to make sure that I'm turning my blade at a 90-degree angle. Is that how you say that? 90 degree or 180 degree? No, I think it's 90-degree angle. Basically, you bring your blade from this position to this position as you bring your blade forward in the water. Now, this is more of a good technique to get a grasp of when it comes to windier conditions as you're paddling upwind especially. So as you're paddling upwind, as you bring your blade forward, rather than pushing the wind with your paddle blade, you can cut through it more easily as you bring your blade forward again. Yeah. Say that again. As you're bringing your blade forward again, replanting it in the water. So it's just a good technique to learn when it comes to paddling upwind. On non-windy days, it's definitely not like the most necessary thing to be doing as you're paddling, but for people like myself who go paddling boarding all the time in a variety of conditions, it's just a good habit to kind of create, as it's not going to hurt you when you're paddling in calm conditions either. So a good thing to work on. So the best way to see this is the front angle here. We'll see I'll bury my paddle blade, power through, then as I bring it forward, we should see my blade turn sideways here. You can see me turn my blade sideways, so now you can see it's cutting through the air as I bring it forward. And as I bring it back to start my next catch phase, I flatten it back out again, then bury it. Power through once again, exit, and as soon as I'm switching hands here. Powering through here again. As soon as I exit, you should start to see that blade, start to angle already here. Flat. Boom. Out again. Ready to go. Good job. Woo. Feather my blade, which is a good thing to be doing. Alright, now lastly, let's take a look kind of all these things working together seamlessly, kind of in the 5 phases of the paddle stroke, where we have your entry phase, your catch phase, your power phase, your exit phase, and then your recovery phase. And so we'll look at all these together, make sure they're kind of working all seamlessly to making sure that I have good hinging in my hips as I'm reaching forward, that my body's staying relaxed, and my back is staying nice and straight as I'm paddling through the paddle stroke, and all these things working seamlessly together, as well as my posture and position on the paddle board. So let's start here in the front view. My board is flat level here in the water. My knees are a little bit bent here. You kind of can see a little bit nice in that ski boot stance. My top bomber is reaching up and over, just slightly above my head here, setting up for a nice vertical shaft in the water. My bottom hand is just above the middle section here of the shaft, and my blade is ready for that catch phase. So set up right here, looking pretty good. You can see my hips are hinging a little bit to what would be my left-hand side here, allowing my body to kind of curve a little bit towards my paddle shaft, allowing it to be more vertical in the water. So we don't want to see like an over dramatic hinging of the hips where I'm like super hinged over to this side on my paddle board, because that's honestly going to cause me more harm than good. But I am slightly hinged here a little bit towards my paddle shaft to be more vertical. So playing it through here, we can see I'm hinging forward. Once again, I'm maintaining just a slight hinge in my hips to the left-hand side here, allowing for more vertical paddle shaft. Powering through. Setting up once again. Arm reaching over. Which once again, I said it earlier, I could do a little bit more for a better vertical shaft, but fairly close. Powering through. So once again, we're looking at that top pan as I'm powering through. You definitely want to maintain kind of at this head level here during your power phase. We'll see this here in the side stroke here. You can see as I'm in the power phase, my top hand is kind of level with my head, which is what we want to see. We don't want to see this hand too high above our head or too far below, but kind of in this middle range here, which shows that we have good form. All right, let's power through this one real quick right here. All right, so setting things up right here for this next stroke. Right here, we can see my bottom arm is straight once again. My top arm is reaching up and over. I'm starting to hinge in my hips, which is good to allow me to hinge forward for the reach part of my paddle stroke. Let's play it through here. Bury the paddle blade, a little bit of splash there, not overdoing it, but there's a little bit of splash. But right here, we can see that my top arm or top hand is level with my head. My back is nice and straight here. My legs are relaxed in a ski boot stance, but I'm not bouncing up and down. They're kind of locked or in that relaxed ski boots position here. I'm hinged forward. Overall, looks pretty good. It's all working together, powering through the phase, and then exiting towards my feet. Now you can see in this one, I was just a little bit farther behind my feet. That's still an okay range to be paddling in. Let's see what I do in this next one here. In the water. Kind of behind my feet again. It could be the angle of the camera, which part of it too. Yeah, I am paddling a little farther past my feet right here. I talked about a lot of my other videos to kind of focus more on exiting your blade towards the area of your feet. I think I used to be a little more strict on that, trying to say you need to be exiting at your feet. But over the time, learning from my own personal paddle experience, it's okay to have some grace. And if you're paddling just slightly behind your feet, that's still okay. Basically what you want to ensure you're not doing is paddling way behind your feet. Because you're paddling too far behind your feet, you're wasting a lot of energy, because by that point your blade, so I'll show you here in the video, is more at a negative angle. So the farther back here you're paddling with your paddle blade, the further down it's going to be pointing like this, basically pulling yourself down versus pulling yourself forward with each paddle stroke. But as I'm paddling here in the water and powering through, I'm still exiting in an okay area right around my feet. Let's look at the other side real quick. Once again, yeah, I'm exiting near my feet right there. That was a good one. Powering through, exiting toward my feet. Yeah, that looks good. That looks good. And then once again, the last phase will look, we talked already a bit, power phase looked good. Powering through. Exit phase is around my feet, which is good. And then the recovery, once again, all I'm doing this during this recovery time is hinging from my hips, my upper torso back up again, allowing me to have enough distance for my paddle blade to exit out of the water to bring it forward. So I do this by bending my bottom arm a little bit to give it some more room for the water. And then as I bring it forward again, arm straightens out. I'm at the max point on my hinge up here for upward position, and then I start hinging downward for my paddle stroke once again. So it looks good. Good. It's a good entry right there, a good catch, good power, good exit, good recovery. So there you have it, just kind of an overview of my paddle technique and my position on the paddle board, my posture, as well as my whole 5 phases of my paddle stroke. So looking at that video, I mean, I'm pretty happy with myself with how I'm looking so far right now. There are some things I can tweak a little bit with having my paddle shaft more vertical in the waters I'm paddling, as well as making sure I'm fully burying my paddle blade, making sure I don't have any splash as I'm paddling forward in the water. So 2 takeaways I can take away from this video, knowing that I can improve in those areas to make myself an even better paddler. But overall, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll be sure to get out there this week and apply the learn, paddle, repeat method. Sweet sign no, and just have a fun time this week. But that's it for today. I'll catch you guys in the next video.